So all the aspects which are related to advertising and advertising management has been dealt with in the previous sessions. In today's session, as the title of this paper goes, advertising and sales management. So today's session, we shall focus on sales management, and we shall try to cover what is sales management, the nature and scope, functions of sales management, personal selling and salesmanship, and how Salesforce automation takes place. Now, as I said earlier, promotion of a company, promotion of products and services of a company can take place through utilization of various elements of the promotion mix. The essential elements which are there are advertising, sales promotion, direct marketing, personal selling, publicity, and public relations. Now, out of all these, the prominent ones which occupy a major share in the entire promotion budget of a company is basically to do with advertising and sales promotion. Now, sales promotion is being usually done by a sales team, and this team also takes care of how sales of a company are to be managed. So we shall dedicate the further sessions related to sales management, which is there. Now, if you see the definition given by sales management by the American Marketing Association, American Marketing Association says that it's nothing but a process whereby the company is planning, the company is directing, and it is controlling the process of selling, and which also includes, recruiting people who would be selling, training them, equipping them, assigning them roles, responsibility, territories in which they have to sell, supervising their work, remunerating them, and motivating them, so that all these tasks which are being taken up are helping them to attain the end results of promoting a product. So American Marketing Association's definition you can actually segregate into two parts and say that it's because the word management is included there. So you got to understand the aspects of management there. That's how planning, direction, and control comes. The first part of this definition, which talks about planning, direction, and control. And comes the second part of the definition. You apply these managerial functions of planning, direction, and control to what? You apply these functions to recruiting people, selecting people, training them, assigning territories to them for selling, motivating them, and rewarding them with compensation. So these things are a part of your sales management. So according to American Marketing Association, sales management, because the term is a combination of two terms, sales and management. Aspects of management are considered in relation to selling. So you have aspects of management, planning, direction, and control in relation to selling, because who would sell? It is the people who would sell. Therefore, you are recruiting them, you're selecting them, you're training them, you're motivating and compensating them so that they are able to promote and sell the product of the company, which is there. That is the definition of sales management by American Marketing Association. If you see what sales management is all about and what kind of a scope and nature it has got, basically sales management is one function which is a pervasive function. It runs across the company. You cannot say that because only the marketing department is concerned with the activity of selling, so sales management is restricted to that department. It is actually a function which is all pervasive, irrespective of the nature of the company, size of the company, location of the company, the nature of the goods and services that are being sold. Sales management is a function which is applicable to all types of companies and applicable at all times. So it's an all-pervasive function where you say that whether be it a commercial organization, non-commercial NGO organizations, or government organizations, whether be it companies which are selling tangible products or companies which are selling services, whether be it companies which are selling within India or outside India, sales management is a function which is applicable to all. So the very nature of this particular function is that it is all pervasive. This one. Second thing is that in sales management, there are different roles which a sales team has. So different positions will be there, and different roles will be played by a sales management team as such. And this particular function tries to integrate itself into the entire aspect of marketing management. So marketing management, you would say, is incomplete if you do not have sales management within that. And because you're trying to connect yourself to the consumer, so the aspect of relationship marketing, relationship selling comes into picture there, because the company through their sales team tries to build up relationship with the customer. So therefore relationship marketing, or which we basically call as customer relationship management, that becomes your crux of sales management. So therefore relationship selling is also involved in it. And it's a very systematic approach. It is not haphazard, it is not unplanned. As the definition also said, it is planning of and all the activities which are there. So therefore, it is a very systematic and it's a very planned function, where the company takes it up sequentially, all the activities which it is supposed to be doing, and it's a very continuous process. There is no time where you can say that the company is not engaged in selling. If as long as the company has to survive and grow, it has to continue to engage itself in the process of selling. So it's a very continuous process, and sales management has got its own goal. The company may be wanting to achieve highest revenue, largest customer base, highest share in the market, increased revenue for a particular period of time. So there could be different goals for which the particular company may be working. So sales management is also goal oriented as such. So these are some of the points which will describe to you the nature of sales management. And also, as I said, you are trying to integrate that with the marketing function. So you have, the integration in the form where you have a promotion manager, and you have a marketing research and sales team and logistics team and customer service team. And because it is relationship marketing, there is a whole lot of value addition and partnership which is being done with towards the side of the consumer. This goes as part of nature. Now, if somebody has to find out as to what is it that the sales team actually does. So you have an overview of the functions which are being done by this particular sales team. So if you see this particular diagram, you see the sales team performs all these functions, and the sales management basically involves all these functions. First, they begin with a scanning of the environment, because as a sales, if you have to manage your sales, you will have to know what is your internal environment of the company and what is the external environment. Because depending upon the changes which may be there in the environment, things will become applicable to the companies which are there. So you have external and internal organizational environments, which are a part of your sales management. In your environmental analysis, the sales team or the sales manager basically is concerned about what is the environment within the company, what is the value system, the philosophy, the ideology of the top management, culture, values, and beliefs of the employees in the company. Because depending on what is the value system of the company, the sales team will have to have their own agendas and goals formulated. So therefore, internal organizational environment and climate has to be studied by the sales team. Likewise, they also have to understand what is the external environment in which they are working, because unless I know what is the political system, what is the technological advancement, I will not be able to push sales to people. So say, for example, if people are more tech savvy, but I'm still using traditional methods of selling, then I will not be able to penetrate much to my consumers, because though they are tech savvy, I'm still using the traditional old methods which are not tech savvy as such. So therefore, the technological advancements which are there, a part of the external environment, forces the sales team also to adapt itself to those changes which are there. Likewise, all kinds of changes which may be there in the or environmental factors which are there in the social environment, cultural environment, factors which are there outside the company, which are beyond the control of the company, that is to be examined by the sales management team. Because unless they know the environments which are there within and outside the company, they will not be able to craft a marketing strategy. They will not be able to craft a sales management activity. So therefore, for crafting a marketing within which sales management is a part, it is necessary that companies will have to examine the environment around them and within them. Once the environment analysis is being done, then an overall marketing strategy will be formulated. That overall marketing strategy also includes a sales management strategy. So sales management is a part of marketing management. Therefore, when marketing strategy is being crafted, at that time you would have the sales management activities also which are being undertaken. In your sales management activities, the marketing manager, the sales manager basically plans about sales. They organize the sales office. They take up a deployment of people, recruiting, selecting, and training and motivating them and supervising them so that work can be done and management can happen. So the sales management activities which are involved in a particular company will revolve around sales planning, organizing the sales office, recruiting, selecting, and training people, deploying them towards respective jobs which are there in the company, in the sales team, supervising their activities, and making, formulating policies for accountability. Now, once these activities are being chalked out, the sales management activity also involves finding out what kind of performance parameters are there for people. So when you have recruited salespeople with you, sales executives, or it could be customer relationship managers who are with you, you will have to find out what kind of requirements are there for their jobs, how do they perceive their roles, what kind of qualifications are necessary for them to enter into the sales team, what are the performance standards which are being laid by you so that these team can work. For example, an FMCG company can have a sales team of selling detergent powders to households in a particular locality and fix a target of selling at least 10,000 packets per day. So when you have that particular target, that is measuring the performance of the employees, measuring the performance of the sales team, which is there. So therefore, the salesperson performance also will be overviewed there. And then you have controlling the sales force and evaluating their performance. So your sales management activity will revolve around all these functions which will be there. Then you have, this the same activities which are there. You can categorize that as, your formulation of marketing strategy separately and the formulation of the sales management function. So if you see sales management functions which are there, you have the sales planning and forecasting, sales force organization, deploying them, assigning territories to them, and planning the route in which they are supposed to be working. So it will involve all these activities which are there in the company. So sales management revolves around all these activities in an organization. Now this team whom you have hired for doing your sales function, first of all, you will have to understand that you need to plan a very profitable and customer-oriented sales team, for which you have to have chalking out of the goals and objectives, drawing a forecast about how many units will be sold or how much sale will take place in a particular time, in a particular territory, assigning budgets for the sales office, because selling function incurs cost. So therefore, you have to assign budgets for it. Defining roles and activities of people who are involved in the entire process. And then these people who are there in the entire process, you will have to now recruit them, select them. You will have to employ them into their respective jobs, train them, because depending upon whatever is the nature of products in your company, these people have to be also given adequate training. For example, if I am a seller of electronic goods and I hire salespeople, it is not necessary that the candidate whom I have hired has complete technical knowledge about all the electronics. So therefore, I will have to spend at least 15 days or 1 month or 3 months in training the person to understand the technical details of the electronic items that I'm selling. So what happens then, so that the salesperson is aware about all the details of the product and will be able to push the sales to the consumer and answer the queries from the consumer. So therefore, you have to have training being given to the sales personnel so that customers are being kept satisfied. And because these salespeople are bringing revenue to the company through selling, it is necessary that their remuneration also should be justifiable to the job that they are doing. So therefore, you have to think about what is the average performance that you're expecting from a salesperson and how much of a salary are you going to pay to that particular person. So you evaluate their performances. You may be having surveys to be done, or you may be doing mathematical numerical calculations to understand how many units are sold per person, or you may conduct sessions to understand how these people are indulging themselves into selling. So your sales function will basically look like this, as shown on the screen, where you talk about planning a profitable customer-oriented sales team, staffing the right type of people, training them, putting up performance standards for them, motivating and remunerating them, and then evaluating their performances which are there in the company. Now, one essential thing which is there in sales management is forecast, because as a sales team person, I need to forecast how many units or how many customers will I serve per day, per month, half yearly, or per year. So therefore, forecasting is very essential. And while you do forecasting, there are various methods which are available for a person to do forecasting, both quantitative as well as qualitative method, because as a salesperson, I need to understand how many units will I be able to sell, how many customers will I be able to serve. So therefore, forecasting is an essential function in your sales management, which involves a lot of techniques or methods which are there, both qualitative and quantitative methods which are there. In qualitative method, you will forecast about the sales of your product from your company, depending upon what is the opinion of the top management. If the top management is aspiring that so many units have to be sold in a particular period, then your sales forecast will be closely related to that figure. So you forecast that for that period, those many units are to be sold because it is the opinion of the top management. So that's a qualitative method, depends upon the executive opinion. Second can be a Delphi method, where you talk about taking the services of experts in a particular field, and then depending upon the expert opinions which come, you forecast the statistics which are related to sales. So that is called as a Delphi technique. Delphi technique, basically, or Delphi method is one where the company is making use of the expert advice. The experts could be a sales analyst, it could be marketing analyst, it could be marketing researchers who can predict as to how many units can be bought by the consumers in the market from so and so company. So that way, that those experts will inform the company and the sales team about the sales forecast. So that also is a method. One more method can be Salesforce composite, where you talk about how many people have you hired in your sales team and how much are you expecting that each person will sell. So depending on that, you calculate and then you add up your expectation from each member in the sales team. If I have 10 people and I expect that I want every person to sell 20 goods, then 10 into 20, I should be able to sell at least 200 products in a day. So that way, what happens, that is called as a sales force composite. Depending upon the number of sales people that you have got, what is a prediction that the company is making that so many people will be selling? That is your sales force composite. One more method is you find out whether the buyers intend to buy the product or not. You see, when we go shopping in shopping malls and all, or supermarkets and all, you have people who come to survey us and ask us if we intend to buy something, because that is a method of forecasting how many people will end up buying your product. So that's a survey of buyer's intention. Or you can simply do test marketing. Maybe you can give free samples initially, charge a little lesser price after that, then charge a normal price, and then see whether people's buying behavior remain the same when you gave a free sample and when you started charging the actual price. Depending on that, you can make a sales forecast. It so happens that when we visit supermarkets and all, we get some free sample and we use it. But if we are supposed to pay the price for it and then buy, we think twice about it as a consumer whether we want to buy or not. So that way, your test marketing can be done to forecast whether a consumer will be interested in buying the product or not interested. These are qualitative methods which will be there because you're trying to find opinions of people. You're trying to ask somebody and get data related to that. Apart from that, you can also have your quantitative methods which can be used because these are a little high-end methods which involves a lot of statistical rigor, where in statistics, we learn about moving averages, exponential smoothing, and decomposition, ratio method, regression econometrics. These are all mathematical. Some of them are mathematical and statistical models where it will predict for the company as to how much of units can be sold in a particular period. So you have these as your methods of a sales forecast, right? This is one. This is related to what is an overview of sales management, and what is the nature of sales management, what type of activities are involved in the sales management process. Then we proceed towards sales planning. How do companies plan their sales? So sales planning, which involves budgeting also. How do you assign territories or quotas to salespeople, and how is forecasting done, which I already told a little bit. And then what is meant by a strategic sales plan, because whichever you plan, it all depends upon the real-time processing in the market, and also competitors are present in the market. So in the presence of the competitors, how much will your product be able to sell? So therefore you want to have strategic sales plan, make sales as a strategy of earning revenue for the company. So therefore this further now we will talk about sales planning, budgeting, and control. As we all know, planning is basically laying down a future course of action, where you talk about what is to be done in the future. That future could be next minute, next hour, next day, next month, next year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It could be anything. So when you are talking about sales planning, you are talking about anticipating the environmental developments which are there around you, and how do you make use of these developments so that you don't miss out on any marketing or selling opportunity which is around you. So this is called a sales planning, where you talk about how do you anticipate the environment. And when you have anticipated the environment, how do you check for the developments which happen in the environment that they be in your favor? How do you make use of the opportunities which are there in the environment so that the company is able to sell well? So sales planning will be giving a framework to your sales executives, and it will give of the sales activities which will happen in the company, and what is expected of a sales team. What is it that you are looking from the looking for in your sales team? How much, what kind of activities do you want them to take up? How much do you want them to sell? So all those things put together will be your sales planning. So sales planning involves anticipation of environmental developments, preparing to meet those developments which are there, and make use of the opportunities of those developments which are there. Now, sales planning is important because unless you plan, you will not be able to proceed further. So sales plan will basically bring a clarity in the mind of the consumer, in the mind of the company, that how much is the company intending to sell, and how much, what position will you enjoy in the market when your goods are being sold high or low. So whatever efforts you put in your sales planning will bring a clarity to your sales effort. And at the same time, it will allow your salespeople or your sales team to focus on specific activities or related to the market, related to the consumers, related to the prospective consumers who are there. And whatever happens in the entire process of sales management, everybody will be able to keep a track of it. If you have a plan, then you can keep that plan as a blueprint and then see in what direction are you progressing, what kind of activities are you doing. So it will enable everybody to track progress in a very consistent manner, which will be there, and it will provide information about the entire sales effort of the company to the top management. So a sales plan, basically, because it's a documented blueprint, which will help the company to understand in what direction the sales activities of the company are progressing. That's why sales planning becomes very important. Now, sales plans can be of different types. You can have plans which can be very short, where you talk about ranging from within 1 year to up to 2 years, or you can have plans which can be for a long period, where you talk about 3 to 5 years. So you have short range plans, which are for 1 or 2 years, and then you have the long range plans, which will be running from 3 to 5 years. Apart from that, you also have plans which can be geographical. The plans can be based upon customers, and it can be segment-wise. Let us discuss these a little later about what are all these plans, especially the ones, the other plans which are there. Now, when you plan for your sale, what are the steps that you take up? So there are steps in sales planning. Selling is one, planning to sell is another. So when you sell, the activity, the stages are different. When you plan to sell, the stages are different. So here we are talking about steps in sales planning. So when you plan to sell, what steps will you take? First of all, you have to analyze who are you and where are you? What is your company? What is the mission vision of your company? Where do you stand currently in the market? Once you know you have an analysis of your own self, you will be able to formulate a sales plan. For example, if you are a company which is selling obsolete product and you have a sales plan where you want your team to fetch high sales, it will be impossible for the team to fetch high sales because where are you and who are you does not match with your sales plan, because you are selling products, because you are in the business of obsolete goods. Your goods have become obsolete. Nobody is demanding that in the market. So you cannot have a very ambitious sales target and tell your sales team to fetch a lot of revenue through sale of obsolete products. So that will not work. Similarly, if you're into a fashion industry and you're selling some product which has gone out of fashion and you insist the salespeople to fetch high revenue, it will not be possible. So where do you stand? You have to make an analysis of that. Similarly, what are the market conditions? You cannot have a very ambitious sales plan when recessionary tendencies are there in the market, or when clutter and competition is very intense in the market. Your sales plans also will not be very ambitious. When you have hyperinflation or inflationary tendencies in the market, not many people would want to buy, except if it is essential for them to buy. They wouldn't prefer buying because of the high prices of the commodities. So your market condition doesn't permit you to have a sales plan which is very ambitious as such. Similarly, you also have to analyze who are your competitors. Who are the people with whom I am competing to sell, and what kind of choices the consumers have got. Because depending upon what all choices the consumers have got, you have to understand your sales plan in relation to the competition. So who are your competitors? What do they do? Whether you are selling a product which is similar to theirs, whether you are selling a substitute product, is a substitute product available for your product? Can your product be sold in a market where competitors are many, too many competitors are there? So you will have to examine all those things there. Then you also have to examine what kind of opportunities are there in the market. If the opportunities in the market are too green, where you can bank upon the opportunity and sell a lot of revenue, then you will have to grab the opportunity. So as a sales planning, first of all, an analysis of all these things will be done. Where are you? Where do you stand? What are the market conditions? Who are your competitors? What kind of opportunities are there in the market? Once you have understood these conditions, then you will go for setting goals. Setting goals where your goals should be something which should be smart. The SMART goals, as we know, specific goals, measurable goals, actionable goals, realistic goals, and time-bound goals. So when you are setting sales goals, for example, if you are selling in a territory which is new, you cannot have a sales goal of aiming to sell a maximum number in that territory. Because you are new to the territory, people living in the territory will have to get accustomed to your product, get aware to your product, and then start preferring your product. So your entire IDA process will happen, their attention, interest, desire, action, which I told in the previous session. So when you are entering into a new territory, your sales will not be as high as it could have been in any other territory which you were there. So what happens there? You talk about setting those goals which are smart, setting goals which are measurable, set goals which are specific goals, like this territory, this salesperson, I want these many number of units to be sold, these many number of consumers to be sold. So what happens? The company is very specific there. So goals have to be specific. Then they have to be measurable. As a sales team, if you are setting a goal, then all the goals have to be very measurable as such. You cannot have the goals where you're not able to measure them. All goals should be measurable. Then, for example, how many units you want to sell, how much percentage you want the sales to increase, how many number of consumers you want to sell. So all these are all numbers where you're able to measure your sales efforts. So measurability will come into picture. A, where your goals should be actionable. You should be able to take an action on your goal. So the goal should be actionable. They should not be goals which are too far to execute or implement your marketing activities. So all your goals have to be actionable. Then they have to be realistic. You cannot have goals which are unreal or which are very ambitious, where it will be difficult for you to sell. So your sales goals should be all realistic. Then they should be time bound. Because selling is an activity which is fetching revenue for the company, that particular activity has to be time bound. Otherwise, the company will start making, because cost is already incurred. If you don't generate revenue, how will you be able to make profit? So therefore, it is necessary that all your sales plans and the goals in your sales plan should be very realistic and time bound. So therefore, your SMART concept will apply to your goals: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, timely. These goals have to be set. Now, once the goals are understood, then you have to develop a plan. How will you achieve the goals? What kind of risks, challenges are standing ahead of you in attainment of the goals? And what kind of strategies or tactics can you have to achieve those goals? So you have to develop a plan where you are laying down a path of achieving the goals which you have set. Then you will have to execute the plan which you have set and evaluate whether you are able to attain the sales goals which you formulated or not. So these steps will be considered in the process of your sales planning. As I said, selling is one thing and planning for sales is another thing. So as a sales team and as a sales manager, an individual will have to engage in the activity of planning for selling. So when selling happens and when sales planning happens, a manager can simply prepare a checklist and then say whether you are proceeding in the right direction or not. So a checklist can be prepared where you talk about what is the agenda of sales call, what kind of dialogue do you open with the customers, and how do you listen to the customer when the customer has got queries, and all, taking notes, summarizing and solving the issue of the customer, or pitching your sales which will be there. So you have this checklist which people can remember. Now, because selling has to be strategic in nature, because you are selling in a world which is very competitive. Perfect competition, monopolistic world. Monopolistic market is one where you wouldn't have any competitor, but rarely do you find a product category or a service category in which monopoly exists. Monopoly is equivalent to a myth. So therefore, when you are in a highly competitive market, it is necessary that you strategize your operation, because strategy basically means an action plan in relation to your opponent, in relation to your competition. So when you have competition and they have their strategies of selling, likewise you also should have a strategy of selling. So that particular sales strategy will depend upon various parameters, the knowledge which a sales team has got about all these parameters. As a sales team, as a sales manager, when I'm crafting a sales strategy, I should have complete knowledge about the market. So which is the market in which I'm selling? Who are the competitors who are there in the market? What kind of environments affect that particular market? So I need to have complete knowledge about the market. Then I need to have full information about my own company. Now, a lot of companies make mistakes of not orienting their employees to various functions of the company, not orienting their employees to various products and services of the company. So if this mistake can be avoided and employees can be passed on with the complete information about the company, then the sales strategy can be made very effective. So in sales strategy, the sales team also need to have knowledge about the company. So what is the company? When was it established? Who are the founders? What was their ideology? How many products is it selling? In how many countries does it have in operations? All those things necessarily all the sales team members will have to have. So company knowledge. Then the sales team will also have to have knowledge about the customer. Who is your customer? What kind of habits, preferences, tastes do they have? That's why what salespeople do, they do a profiling of their customers. You see, we get a lot of emails and SMSs which are unsolicited, especially now because search engine optimization is being done. So when you search on any search engine, Google or Alta Vista or Yahoo or Bing or anything, they store our preferences, and those preferences as a part of your web policy, those preferences are also being shared by companies. So when the companies have knowledge, for example, if your target market is anybody who is between the age of 20 to 27 years, and you're selling a product to them, and I need a profile of my consumer, then as a sales team, I can simply get this profile very easily. So do I have a complete knowledge about my customer or not? I need to understand that. That is customer knowledge. Then you should have knowledge about various parameters which are used in measuring your sales activities. So units to be sold, ratios and percentages which are there, metrics, all metrics which are related to selling. I need to have knowledge about all those metrics. Revenues, sales revenue metrics, metrics related to customers, retention, acquisition, metrics which are related to cost incurred in producing and cost incurred in selling, so that I identify the profit which is there. So I need to have information about the metrics. Then as a sales team, it is necessary that the whole sales management team has to be very skillful, because selling is a people's job, where you talk about, you got to be a people's person. You need to have the ability to explain to people, listen to people, understand people, convince people, clarify their doubts, finally hit the sale. So therefore there's a whole lot of people skill which is involved in the job of selling. So therefore that also should be present in your sales strategy which is there. Then knowledge about how to sell, that invariably the sales team has to have knowledge about selling. So this is how planning will happen for selling. And when you sell, there is also a budget which is there. So you have a sales budget which you have to prepare. So basically it is a forecast about how many units the company is intending to sell over a given period of time, and how much revenue are you going to generate. So when you prepare a sales budget, it is nothing but taking inputs from your sales forecast. So you forecast about sales and then you prepare a budget. Like how any organization prepares budget for different functions. You can have a production budget, you can have a budget for labor, you can have a budget for material. Like that you have budget even for sales, which is called as a sales budget, which is basically a forecast of number of units that you're expecting to sell over a period of time, and revenue that you are intending to generate from selling that particular units in a particular period of time. So you have various factors which will affect how much of sales budget the company can prepare. One of the leading factors which affect the sales budget is what is the capacity of the company. How much can the company produce? How much capacity does it have to sell? Depending on that, you can have your sales budget. For example, if a company has got a production process which is labor intensive, where you use more of laborers rather than machines, and in such circumstance, in case you have a layoff, employees layoff is happening, or employees have gone in for a strike, then in such a situation your capacity will be restricted. So your sales budget also will be restricted, because these people have not engaged in production process. So the number of units that you are trying to sell also will be less. So therefore your capacity of the company to produce and to sell will determine your sales budget. Then capacity of the company for launching new versions of the product, that will also determine sales budget. What kind of new launches or product innovations or new products the company is coming out with. Based on that also, if I come up with new products very frequently, then my sales budgets will be not consistent over a period of time. So because I am adding new products every time, so therefore new launches will also affect the sales budget. All kind of seasonal fluctuations which may happen will also affect, because you will not know on account of the seasonal fluctuations, you wouldn't know whether the consumers will continue to buy your product or not because of this fluctuations in the seasonal. So therefore seasonal fluctuations also will impact your sales budget. Then what kind of advertising and publicity policy do you have? Because sometimes Advertising is a measure of promotion. So when you have good advertisements which are being there, it will naturally push more number of units being demanded in the market. So when more units are demanded in the market, naturally your sales budget also will go up. So advertising will affect. Then your prices. What kind of price do you have? Pricing policy that the company may be having. That also will have an impact on your sales budget. Competition which is there in the market, government policy which is there around you, what kind of changes is there in consumers' demand, preferences, that also will have an impact on your sales budget which is there. Now, when a company is preparing the sales budget, there are certain steps that it has to follow. First of all, you have to determine what is the budget period. Are you preparing a budget for 1 month, 1 week, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? So what is the period for which you're preparing the budget? That is very essential, which is the first step in sales budget. Second step will be collect the data for the budget period. So if you're going to prepare sales budget for 6 months, what is the likely data that you're supposed to have for 6 months? So data related to cost for the 6 months, employees for the 6 months, data related to territories, data related to consumer preferences, needs, wants, all the data you have to collect for the budget period. Then you have to study what is the trend in the market. How is the market reacting to your product? In what way the trend is happening in relation to your product. So study the current trends in the market. Then you have to also ensure that the company has got sufficient production capacity, because if production capacity suddenly stops or there is some kind of a problem in the manufacturing production process, then sales budget also will be halted. So you have to ensure that production continues in the company. And then when you are preparing this particular sales budget, the approach that the company should have is a bottom-up approach. Because if you have top-down approach, top management may not be knowing the real situations, operational situations of the company. So therefore, they may be their of selling may be different from the forecast of selling by the sales team. So therefore, the sales budget has to be prepared by adopting a bottom-up approach, where people who are actually in the operational activities, they will have to help the company formulate the sales budget, or they formulate the sales budget and get it approved by the top management. So it has to use a bottom-up planning approach which is there, and then you will have to compare the results which come out of your sales budget. So that way the sales budget will be planned. And now in you have all these situations again in budget. So planning the sales budget and coordinating in relation to the sales budget which is there. Now, as I was telling that you have different types of budgets which are being prepared. These are all prepared keeping in mind what is the objective of the company. If the objective of the company is to have increased sales, then my sales budget also should be high, because the objective is like that. Same way, that will impact the cash budget, that will impact the production budget, that will impact other budgets also which are there in the company. So there is always a relationship between sales budget and the other budgets which are there in the company. It could be cash budget, it could be production budget, it could be budget related to laborers, budget related to materials. So there's a connection between all the budgets which are being used. So sales planning process, and budgets. Now we'll come to sales territories. Now, there are sales people who are there in the sales management team. Now, in case you don't assign responsibility to anybody, nobody will come forward to become accountable for it. So no one's responsibility basically also will not bring accountability on anyone's part. So therefore, it is necessary that sales function is being allocated to people territory-wise. So basically, you are trying to assign sales territories to salespeople so that they strike sales in those territories only. This process is called as assigning territories to salespeople. So what are these sales territories? It can consist of existing and prospective consumers to whom you want to sell. Territory here need not be understood as a geographic location. Territory It can be understood as a geographic location, but it is not always a geographic location. So it talks about how many number of people a person is supposed to sell to. So it can be, for example, if I'm working in a call center as a sales team, I am supposed to make 100 calls per day. So my sales territory is 100. That is what the meaning of sales territory means. If I am selling in an electronics showroom refrigerators, I should sell at least refrigerators to 10 consumers per day. So that is my sales territory. Or if I want to sell in Hyderabad, how many districts in Hyderabad? That can also be a sales territory. So it is not only a geographic, as we understand territory being only geographic in nature, it may not be geographic. Existing customers that you are assigning or potential customers that you're assigning to your salespeople, that is called as your sales territory. Usually, what companies will do is they will assign territories geographically. They will, for example, they may divide whole of India. If your sale happens throughout India, you may divide whole of India into North Zone, South Zone, East Zone, West Zone, Central Zone, and then each zone will become one territory. So somebody will be a manager, zonal manager of sales, zonal sales manager, where you talk about, he or she having to take care of sales in that particular zone. So you're also assigning geographic territories as such. Now, why should territories be assigned altogether? See, first of all, it depends upon the size of the company. If the company is very small and you have limited number of salespeople, your selling activity is also small, your sales budget is also small. So there's no need to assign territories as such. But where you have companies which are medium-sized companies and companies which are large corporate houses, it is very necessary that there should be sales territories which should be given to people. So here, sales territory basically, why should companies go for it? You will have more market coverage because of that. You can have a control over how much time people are taking to sell and what kind of an expenditure are you incurring in selling. It will help you to evaluate the performance. For example, if I am selling in a south zone, and in south zone I have 10 people whom I have hired, 10 people's sales performances I can easily evaluate from my zone. So then I can come to know that how my zone is performing in terms of selling. So better evaluation of performances by the sales force can be done when you have sales territories which are being assigned to the consumer. Same way, you can have sales team which will be more effective in case sales territories are there. They can have more improved performances which can be delivered by the sales team. That's why allocation of sales territories to salespeople becomes very essential. So how are these territories designed? First of all, you will have to select a control unit. And for that particular control unit, you have to determine location and you have to find out what are the potential customers who are there. Then you will have to draft your basic territories, which can also be geographical coverage of people, assign people to those territories so that you measure performance and evaluate the performance. That way, the procedure for designing the sales territory will flow. Now, when you have your sales management happening in a territory, you have to have consonants of two items. One is called as the time and one is called as the performance. So time and territory management has to be done by for the salespeople. So what basically will happen is you talk about what are the sales quotas, what are the objectives that you have got. So in case South Zone is there, in South Zone 10 people are there, I am expecting that each one of those 10 will be able to sell at least 500 units, 500 goods. So what I am doing there, I am putting a quota for my salespeople that they should sell so many quantities, 500 quantities. Then in South, in say same South Zone, there are so many places in South Zone. So these 10 people, to which places do I assign? So you assign them to some geographic locations and you give them time to complete that selling task. So time allocation will be coming into the picture. Then you will have to do sales planning, as we already said. Then scheduling it. When are these sales team or sales people supposed to sell? So you have to schedule and route their activities in the direction of selling. So scheduling and routing will come into picture. And you have to evaluate the customer performance. Customer evaluation and territory evaluation should be done. How many customers a salesperson was able to satisfy by selling, and in which territory did he make the sale. So you do an evaluation territory wise and quota wise evaluation of the sales team people who are there at the sell. So that is your territory and team management. So you have sales quotas which are there. Sales quota basically is a target that people are trying to achieve. It is a quantitative measure where you are trying to understand how many units can be sold. So fixing number of units to be sold by a employee, by a member of the sales team is called as a sales quota. So for example, if I put a target that during March, April, or during the end of the financial year, I want so many units to be sold to people. So I am putting a quota to my salespeople. So that is called sales quota, nothing but a target which I am giving to the salespeople for selling for a specific period of time. For this month, you have to sell these many units. So that's called as a quota. Company can have different types of quotas which can be there. One straight quota can be sales volume quota, number of units which will be there. So volume speaks about the number of units which are there for selling. So sell 500 units, target 300 customers, or sell so many units in such and such territory. So you will have a sales volume quota. Then the company can also have a profit quota where they will talk about how much of a profit is getting added through selling to that particular company. So 10% profit, 5% profit, that way you can have a profit quota. Or expenditure which is being incurred by the sales team people. So you will have a quota which is being fixed even for expenses which are to be incurred. Or you can have a quota which is related to other activities, or simply a quota which is a combination of more than one quota. So sales quota basically are targets which are being fixed for achieving something in a specific period of time by the sales team, which is there. Now, as I was telling that the sales team engages itself in the activity of forecasting, and forecasting has got different techniques to it, which I informed just some time back. Now, sales forecasts, which you forecast is nothing but prediction. So what you predict for sales, number of units to be sold can be of three types. You can have prediction, or you can have a forecast which is related to the product itself. You can have a forecast which is related to the time. You can have a forecast which is related to the geography. So when you have a forecast which is related to the product, the forecast can be in terms of total units. It can be in terms of percentage that your company products are there in the whole industry. Percentage, product level, it can also be related to a particular product line and how much are you selling in that product line, and particular product item and how much are you selling in that product item. So you can have different types of sales forecasts which can be there. And the time period for this particular forecast can be either long term, medium term, and short term. So you can have forecasts which you can make for more than 1 year, forecasts which you can make for 1 to 5 years, forecasts which you can make for more than 5 years. You can have different types of forecast which is depending on the time period. You can also have division of forecast in terms of geographic area. What kind of a forecast do you have for the whole world that your product will be sold throughout the world? What kind of a forecast do you have related to the product to be sold within your nation, within your region, within the state, within the territory, or the forecast as per the customer? So you can have a geographic area for which you can have a sales forecast which can be done. Now, while you are making a forecast, there are certain things to remember. That means when you are making a forecast that these many units can be sold, there are certain points to consider while making a forecast. First thing to consider is what are the conditions in which you are making the forecast. So that is your economic conditions. Inflation in the country, purchasing ability of the people, spending habits of the people. So you got to make a forecast of the economic conditions which are there. Then who is your consumer? What kind of choice, preferences, habits the consumers have got? So you got to make a forecast of consumers. And how does the industry itself behave? Say you belong to banking industry, and then you talk about the number of calls that you make in a particular day to hit your sales. Then how is the industry itself behaving? That also will have an impact on your sales, on your selling. So you have industrial behavior. Then time period for which the sales forecast is being done. Are you doing a forecast for 3 months, 4 months, 1 year? So what is the time period for which the forecast is done? And what are the seasonal fluctuations and demands that are there? Internal changes within the company. All those things will determine what kind of factors are there which influence the sales forecast which are there. Previously, as I was telling you, that different methods are available for forecast. This diagram speaks about that. Now, as a company, when you sell, you have to also remember what you are selling and what are the needs of the consumer that you are planning to fulfill through selling. Basically, because consumer needs, habits, and preferences is very essential. If they don't prefer, if they don't need your product, if they don't want or desire your product, then it will be very difficult to sell. So it becomes essential that as a company, you examine what kind of a needs the consumer has got. And one of the best theories which talks about need is your Maslow's need hierarchy theory, which talks about all these different types of needs which are there. As a sales team, you have to understand in which category your product fits in and which need your product is trying to fulfill. Because Maslow has explained about different types of needs. You have physiological needs, needs of food, water, clothing, shelter. So you have those needs. You have needs related to safety. Your companies, for example, you have when people think about safety needs, safety to do with safety of people, safety of assets that you have got. So whether your product is fulfilling any one of those needs, based on that, you can have your sales pitching, which can be done. Because if you have not understood as a salesperson which need of the consumer you are fulfilling, your pitching will be very difficult and people will not get convinced through your pitching. So it is very essential that you understand the different types of needs that the consumers will have. So whether your product is fulfilling the need of the body, whether your product is fulfilling the needs related to safety, whether your products are fulfilling social needs of a consumer, whether your products are fulfilling the self-esteem needs of the consumer, or whether your product is helping the consumer to realize their existence in the world. So here, depending upon what you are, because you are as a salesperson, if the consumer asks, why do you think I should buy this product, or what is the need that I should be buying your product, you should be in a position to relate and convince the consumer about the product fulfilling a particular need. They've been of late you have many companies which are selling odd products also. So when you are selling odd products, which need are you fulfilling for the consumer? You understand. For example, there's been, in India also we got this trend of companies which are selling funeral services. So when such sale happens, as a person who's living, if somebody comes and tells me, why don't you buy your funeral services, I would be more optimistic in nature and say that I want to live long, and therefore I will not buy funeral services as of now. On the other hand, you can also think very practically and say that when I die, who will take care of me? So therefore, let my death also be safe. And then all my procedures after my death be in safe hands. So therefore, I can convince the consumer that your needs which are related to your safety needs, or needs which are related to your death being also safe, or after death procedures also being safe, I'm trying to convince people to use my funeral services. So you see, this is such an odd service, which as a consumer, I would never think about buying. But there've been companies which have penetrated very easily, even in India. Because if you talk about West, you have a dismantled family system, and then you have more of an indifferent attitude of people who live there. So there you can think about companies which penetrate the funeral services. But think about India, where you have a family and the family system still upholds relationships which are there. It's very difficult to penetrate with such odd products. But if you have a salesperson who is able to pitch it right, then even such odd products also can be easily sold in the market. That's why the consumer, that's why as a salesperson, you will have to remember these needs and see where your product fits into all these needs of the consumer. Then you have needs which are related to social needs of consumers. See, sales teams come up with so bright ideas of selling that they relate the product to the needs of the consumer. So you talk about social needs, for example, you talk about recreation, you talk about entertainment, you talk about love, relationship, friends, intimacy, and all these things where the need of people being around or recreation being around is easily fulfilled. So as a salesperson, I should also pitch my sales in case I have products which are fulfilling social needs of a consumer. Esteem needs, naturally, because people think about prestige and self-esteem. So it would be very convenient for a sales team to convince people in case they are selling in case they're selling esteemed products or esteemed goods as such. Actualization is very far off because out of the world, how many ever people live, most of us stop with the 4 needs which are there. It's only a very few people who go for self-actualization need, where they realize what is their full potential and why are they living and what is it, the purpose of their life. So when that comes, as a company, do you have any product? Do you have any service which is helping you to fulfill the actualization need of a consumer? So therefore, as a sales team, I will have to think about and remember all the needs which are there and then fit in my product into any one of those needs of the consumer. So your need hierarchy will have to be remembered. Then I should also know complete information about the brand. When I'm working in the sales team, I should have full knowledge about the brand. What is the brand? Brand is basically an identity you give to your product, because a company may be producing different products to cater to the needs of different types of people. Each product will have its unique identity, just called as a brand. So brand, basically you are talking about as a sales member, sales team, salesperson or executive, I should know information about the brand. So have knowledge about what products the company produces, how many brands the product has got, how many brands am I selling, and how are they different from one another in the market, so that I will be able to attract loyalty from the side of the customer. So that also becomes essential there. Then, because you are into a sales team, in sales management, you also will talk about the implementation part, where you will understand what is the product. So which problem is the product solving? Because product is basically an offer to the market as a solution of a problem. So therefore, you have to understand what problem your product is solving. So and how can you solve it? So you look into for what is the design of the product, the feature of the product, how feasible is it if a person wants to buy that particular product. So because I'm selling a product, I'm pitching my sales based on the product. As a sales agent, I should have complete information about my product, the features of the product, the designing part, the performance and feasibility part of my product, because I am showing my product as a solution to a problem which is being faced by consumers, or offer which is given to the market. So complete information about the product has to be gained by the salespeople who are there, and also complete information about where do you fall in your portfolio, because you have combination of products that you may be selling. So you got to do an analysis of the different portfolio which is there in the market. So you, as a company, as a sales agent, you have to understand where is your company lying and where can you take your company to. So there was a study done by McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group. BCG is Boston Consulting Group, which has given this particular matrix, which is related to the portfolio of a company, which also should be known to sales team. So in sales management, the concept of BCG also should be introduced to salespeople, so that they have more clarity about how much market share are they intending to attain through selling. See, because what happens if my sales are high, my revenues come more, if I am able to attract to a greater set of customers, then naturally I will be a star company. So that way I will have to understand where do I fall. Then at the same time, I also have to understand the industry structure. Am I selling in an industry which is a fragmented industry, or I am selling in an industry which is a consolidated industry? Because if the industry is fragmented, there will be too many small firms which are competing with one another to sell. If the industry is consolidated, you have one or two big firms which will sell. So in both situations, in both the structures, you will have different types of sales activities which you will take up. So therefore, depending upon industry structure, you have to take decisions. Depending upon the market share, your sales management activities also will differ. If you see this particular BCG matrix, which explains to you about the standing of the company in terms of portfolio, in terms of market share. You see on x-axis and y-axis the relative market shares and the market growth which is there. If you talk about the first quadrant which is there, it is a star. Star companies are those companies which are high growth and high market share company, which means it involves huge amount of investment in the company and the products are a star product. So the sales team will have to keep in effort in order to continue to maintain the same star status to the company. That means high sales growth for the company. Because if the sales teams makes a mistake, how much of a beautiful the product might have been made, it will become very difficult to convince the consumer, and also competitors will be looking for a chance. So the company's status as a star can be shaky. So therefore company will have to be very careful when they are a star company and they are thinking about maintaining their position on the same level, and then the sales efforts are directed towards increasing your market share, which is there. Then you have companies whose growth is very high, but they have a small market share. So high growth, low share companies. Now, for such companies, you have to make more investment in your products so that the chance of becoming the star company is high. Anyway, it is a high growth company, but your market share is low. So how can you increase your market share? You will have to push your sales team to sell more so that your market share increases. So your question mark company can now become a star company. So if according to the BCG matrix, when your sales team is able to put an effort to sell more, then the status of a company of having a low share in the market will go away and a higher share will come. So you proceed from being a question mark to that of being a star company. Then you have companies which are called cash cows. Cash cows are those companies which produce products whose growth is a little slow, low growth, but the market share is very high. So these are called as cash cows. So you have to, because when you milk a cow, there is a lot of benefit that comes. So these products, which are cash cow company products, they should be milked and reinvested. Reinvestment should happen in such companies so that these companies can also become question mark or star companies, which will be there. This to the extent of a company being a star, a question mark, or a cash cow, the sales team's efforts will have to be consistent to maintain a high growth of the company and to convert a low growth company to a high growth company. But if the company is falling in the category of a dog, where you have a very low growth and at the same time market share is also low, then the burden falls higher on the part of the sales team, because it's a low growth company, and for that particular low growth company, which may about to get liquidated or insolvent, it may become. In such a situation, the responsibility is more for the sales team to see to it that the company gets back to work and gets back from low share to a high share, from low growth to a high growth. Any field you take up, there will be companies which will fall under any one of these categories of star, question mark, cash cow, and dog. And any managerial function which you see, you can relate with this particular BCG matrix. You can talk about investment function, you can talk about marketing function, selling function. Each one of those functions get connected to your BCG matrix because this is a part of your strategic sales plan, where you talk about, see, as I said, the very word strategic sales is basically to talk about crafting an action plan or a strategy in relation to your competitor. The moment you say strategy or strategic, it is not in isolation. It is always in relation to competition. So you have competitors with you. They may be having some moves. To counter their moves, you may be having some strategy which will be there. So what happens there? You are talking about, these various sales management techniques which are there, which are being strategies and tactics which are there, which are being used by you in order to attract sales of your product and beat the competition which is there in the market. So this is a part of your strategic sales. And when you have strategic sales, it is necessary that the company salespeople understand BCG matrix, because this is a part of strategic sales. As I said, strategy means competition. And how will you know how much share you have in the market? It is depending on competition. So how much share you have, how much share competitors have, based on that, BCG matrix will help you to know whether you are a cash company, star company, dog company, or question mark company, based on which you can have your sales strategy which can be crafted, right? So in today's session, we have firstly spoken about the earlier part, which was to do with your sales management, what is meant by selling or what is meant by sales management, what all functions are there in sales management, what is the nature of sales management. Then we went ahead and discussed sales forecasting, because it's a part of sales planning process. So what is sales planning? What is the process of sales planning? We discussed. We also commented and discussed about aspects which are related to forecasting and forecasting techniques which are involved, both qualitative as well as quantitative techniques which are there. And we have proceeded towards explaining what is how sales office is basically organized, and how are sales territories being assigned to people, and in what way the sales forecasting methods are applicable and as an employee in the sales department, what kind of quotas can be given to you, what kind of targets can be given to you for forecasting, for hitting sales. As a person in the sales department, you've got to understand what kind of factors influence you in order for selling more. Then as a part of the strategic sales plan, understanding about the BCG matrix also becomes very essential. So in today's session, we had a coverage about first initial aspects which are related to your sales management. In next sessions to come, we shall be discussing about how is the sales office organized. How do you know who's the sales manager? Or now, because you have teams and team style of working, so how is sales team organized? Who leads the sales team? Who all will be the members in the sales team? What do they do? What roles, responsibilities do they have? And how performances are evaluated, and all that is one part of it. Lastly, we would be speaking about what is meant by personal selling. And so, as of now, sales management majority part is being done, because we have spoken about the basics of sales management. We have spoken about the nature, the functions, sales planning steps which were there. Then we spoke about in what way forecasting of sales is being done, what is strategic sales, and how does strategic sales happen. Next session that to come, we shall be focusing upon how is a sales organization organized, sales office organized, and what is meant by personal selling and how personal selling actually happens, which I'll take up in the next session.